Bean THNG. Global Supply Chain. Chapter 1, Global Strategy and Global Supply Chain Management. Strategically at the University Alliance platform as a global vehicle to take its supply chain management education and executive training across the globe. And naturally, global supply chain management had to be a critical portion of this global strategy. But it had to be done in such a way that it was truly global supply chain management and not in any way skewed toward any of the core functions of the supply chain, logistics. Chapter 1, Global Strategy and Global Supply Chain Management. Strategically at the University Alliance platform as a global vehicle to take its supply chain management education and executive training across the globe. And naturally, global supply chain management had to be a critical portion of this global strategy. But it had to be done in such a way that it was truly global supply chain management and not in any way skewed toward any of the core functions of the supply chain, logistics, purchasing, operations, and market channels. In effect, global supply chains have to be treated as an integrated and coordinated effort among global logistics, global purchasing, global operations, and global market channels based on a solid global strategy foundation. Often, books like ours are written by authors who have a particular view and perhaps a particular message to get across to the reader. We are the same. But our position is that logistics, purchasing, operations, and market channels should be treated equally when a firm is strategically developing and implementing global supply chains. Now, it may be that logistics should be stressed more than the other elements in certain situations, but the starting point is the same across all four elements of the global supply chain. The skewness toward one or more global supply chain functions depends on the industry globalization drivers and the worldwide infrastructure facing the company. Another viewpoint we have is that global supply chain management is embedded in and part of corporate-based global strategy. Supply chain management is now an element of corporate strategy, at least, that is our strong belief and one that we stress throughout this book. Multinational corporations cannot run effective and efficient businesses without integrating supply chain management into their corporate strategy. The days when supply chains were treated as tactical, activity-based operations are long gone, and companies that still maintain such a view are falling behind, as we illustrate throughout the book. This means that global supply chains should be discussed at the same level and at the same time as what products or services to develop, how to go about creating global marketing strategies, what countries to enter, and how to strategically beat competitors in various global marketplaces. Corporate strategy does not drive global supply chains, and, by the same token, the corporate strategy that can be developed should not be constrained by global supply chains, although, of course, worldwide infrastructure issues do sometimes constrain what can be developed and implemented. A wealth of data and concepts in the book speak to this issue. Overall, our book on global supply chain management incorporates topics related to leveraging processes, measurements, and tools for strategic corporate advantage. We provide an equal treatment of global logistics, global purchasing, global operations, management, and global market channels, as well as a detailed discussion of the implications of industry globalization drivers for supply chains and the worldwide infrastructure that can facilitate global supply chain practices that exist. These and many related topics come together in 8 chapters that culminate in a discussion of how to manage global supply chains. In the latter part of this book, we also use 16 diverse multinational corporations to illustrate their relative emphasis on global supply chain management vis the other so-called global strategy levers. Finally, we would like to thank David MacDonald-Yawn, Ann Oakman, and Knox Huston for their dedicated assistance in helping us write the book in conversational style. David, for catching our idiosyncrasies in writing style, and for spearheading the promotion of this project, Knox. David is a long-standing business writer, journalist, and master communicator, and his input into the conversational style of the book was very valuable. Anne is a long-standing editor, copy editor, and master of the English language, and her input into the book ensured a clean read for everyone. Knox is senior editor and a 4-point person at McGraw-Hill Professional, and his vision helped crystallize this project. Happy reading, strategizing, and global supply chaining. Chapter 1: Global Strategy and Global Supply Chain Management. Superior global supply chains are strategic total value systems. Welcome to the intriguing world of global supply chain management. No matter where in the world we are born and grow up, we are taught at a very young age to organize our daily lives into smaller pieces, often in a sequential way based upon time increments. This instruction is usually carried out in an informal manner over a considerable period. First by our parents and elementary school teachers, then perhaps by sports team coaches, music instructors, and other activity leaders. The idea is that breaking down projects and undertakings into their component parts or simple steps will make us focused, efficient, and effective in completing tasks. Sometimes we refer to this as division of labor. The desired result of creating these divisions is that each step is completed fully, with high quality and at high speed, to achieve an optimal outcome. In a way, we are all taught to be operational in our daily lives, whether we're focused on our family life or our work life. What about the bigger picture, though, where we can see and achieve vital business leverage? Clearly, not all elements of a task, meetings in a day, or even morsels of food on a plate are equally important or interesting. So what do? We typically make either calculated or intuitive judgments that allow us to focus more heavily on one part of a major task. We make assumptions about a meeting's importance based on the number of people in attendance. And we eat the food on the plate that we like, although perhaps not the food that would give us the energy we need if we are to carry out the tasks we intend to do that day. In essence, we all develop a personal operational scheme for accomplishing things in our lives. Whether we realize it or not, we intuitively develop a strategy for our lives through trial and error based on where we have been and what we hope to be involved in. This does not mean that we do not have bosses at work or at home. It simply means that we take all aspects of our lives into account, often indirectly and intuitively, and form a strategy for how to be global citizens, even in our small corner of the world. In contrast, people and organizations that are involved in global supply chains, all the linkages, resources, and connecting points do not have the luxury of this level of daily oversight and cannot be involved in all aspects of the full supply chain. Rather, supply chain professionals are generally involved in just one or a few links and connecting nodes of the chain, although potentially having some influence over and input into other parts. Like people, global supply chains are total cost systems that work best if all aspects of the chain, for example, links, resources, and connecting nodes, are strategically leveraged. For a global supply chain, the idea is to work toward helping the total chain to succeed, not toward maximizing the success of an individual element of the chain. Now, we still want the firms that are involved in global supply chains to maximize the value they receive from being a part of the chain. However, strategically, such efforts should be at the 30,000-foot level where most commercial airplanes fly. An airplane metaphor also works well in explaining the sophisticated and often delicate nature of global supply chains. Consider how to turn an aircraft. Think of coordination and leverage points. That is, aircraft are typically steered by using an integrated system of ailerons on the wings, elevators at the rear, and a rudder at the tail, with all of these operating in combination with throttle adjustments to control the roll, pitch, and yaw of the 5. Aircraft. It sounds easy enough. In comparison to the aircraft, the ailerons, elevators, rudder, and throttle seem very small. But leverage allows the coordinated and integrated effort of these small pieces of the plane to steer the aircraft. In other words, putting the right combination of a little leverage on the right places through a coordinated effort leads to incredible maneuvering ability. Global supply chains are the same. We want the integrated and coordinated effort to yield optimum global results. To yield optimum results, the tools and ideas covered in this book do away with the illusion that supply chain management in the global marketplace is purely a task-oriented, sequential chain of operational activities that are combined into a whole after the chain is completed. The best value global supply chains are those that strategically leverage the inbound and outbound, or upstream and downstream, operations from raw material to finished products reaching end users. Thus, the use and study of critical leverage points, total cost analysis, one alignment with industry globalization drivers, and combination of global supply chain systems within corporate strategies become the emphasis. Global supply chain management, then, is not the additive utility of its functions, for example, logistics, purchasing, operations, and market channels. Rather, it is the integration and coordination of the strategic leverage points embedded in those supply chain functions. In addition to the functions, we must consider the entities, activity links, and resources throughout the chain. Global supply chains have to be developed and implemented so that they are both operational and strategic. The corporate C-suite is as important as service personnel, and all organizational layers in between should be leveraged at all mission-critical points along the global supply chain. While top management working alongside frontline service personnel is the starting point, we realize that there are constraining issues. For example, suppliers often develop a stronger relationship with corporate buyers than the corporate buyers have with the employees who actually use the products. Expressed from another angle, total cost analysis is interpreted to mean looking at the total cost of a shipment delivered to the ultimate location where it is consumed. What we need is better understanding, development, and implementation of the core leverage points throughout the complete global supply chain, involving all critical entities, including suppliers, partners, agents, buyers, and customers. In some cases, a second-tier supplier can be as critical to the total value offered in the chain as a retailer. Leverage points are leverage points for a reason. They need to be strategically identified, analyzed, and used. In global supply chains, the starting point for determining global leverage and achieving maximum total value is to ask three basic questions. How global is our industry? How global should our strategy be? How global should our supply chains be? These three questions provide the global strategy perspective on supply chains and the foundation for thinking strategically about global supply chains. The questions highlight a logical but often overlooked fact. Virtually all industries have aspects that are global or potentially global. The same goes for strategy. It can be more or less global in its different strategy levers. In that context, an industry is global to the extent that inter-country connections exist within that industry. A strategy is global to the extent that a firm synthesizes its strategies across countries. Integration is the key. If a firm simply operates subsidiaries that design, produce, and market products within a country, then its focus is on being multinational or multilocal. A truly global firm is one that has at least the capability to do business in both the Eastern and Western hemispheres and in both the 6 Northern and Southern hemispheres. After all, global strategy explains 70% of a multinational firm's performance a number that has remained steady over the past decade and is forecasted to stay the same for at least the next 5 years. More important, global supply chains, on average, explain about 20% of a multinational firm's strategic performance in the global marketplace today and are predicted to explain 25% in 5 years. Firms such as AB, 22% of AB's strategy is based on supply chains, AB InBev, 21%, Amex, 16%, ArcelorMittal, 21%, Cemex, 15%, Daimler, 13%, Dell, 23%, FedEx, 14%, Microsoft, 19%, Nestle, 21%, Nokia, 21%, OMV Group, 17%, Siemens, 22%, Scandia, 19%, Swatch, 18%, and Unilever, 21%, are acutely aware of the importance of global strategic supply chains for the worldwide performance of their businesses. In this opening chapter, we introduce a number of key concepts to help understand and position the global opportunity facing supply chain management in the modern business world. In essence, in Chapter 1 of the book, we broadly tackle a potpourri of reasons for strategic global supply chain management and provide a skeleton framework for it. Our journey begins with understanding global trade and global supply chains. Then we review the important role of emerging markets in supporting our global supply chains. The strategic nature of supply chain management drives how we leverage the location of global activities. We provide some important definitions and distinctions, discuss the internal and external integration of supply chain functions, and highlight some of the performance benefits of global supply chains. We conclude this discussion by highlighting the 8 integrating processes that cut across all global supply chains. Given all these topics to be covered, this opening chapter will have good reason to be a potpourri. But by the time we get through the book and to Chapter 8, Managing Global Supply Chains, the structure should be clear in the best spirit of not only global supply chains, but best value strategic global supply chains. Let's start by taking a look at global trade and global supply chains. Global trade and global supply chains. By some estimates, 90% of today's global demand is not fully met and satisfied by local supply. And as shown in Figure 1.1, international trade across countries' borders has increased dramatically in the last few decades. From a supply chain standpoint, this means that the global marketplace